Let's talk tourism.
Hans Pfister is the co-owner of Cayuga Hospitality, the best management company in Costa Rica, and a true believer and pioneer in sustainable practices in Costa Rica. We've known and done business in multiple countries for multiple decades. If you own a hotel, just let Hans run it. Hans, let's talk tourism.
Hi, Casey. Well, it's quite an introduction. You know, the bar is high.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we coordinated shirts this morning. So what's new?
What's new? I guess last time we talked, we were still in COVID mode, right? You know, we were still fighting restrictions and trying to figure out how to sanitize stuff. And so it was a different world, right? You know, so now what's new? We're out of COVID and we've had a couple of amazing years. The pendulum went from rock bottom to sky high. You know, month after month we were beating the numbers from before COVID, right? You know, like 2019 is not even a benchmark anymore. Our benchmark now is 2022 as the best year ever, and looks like 2023 is going to be even better than 2022. However, just as now as we speak, you know, end of August, this is traditionally the beginning of the low season in Costa Rica. You know, some call it the green season. We actually just rebranded it as the wildlife season. I can tell you a little about that later.
I like it.
We are actually right now seeing a back to normal seasonality. You know, last year was really the year still of revenge travel, and you know there was no low season. It was just nuts. And the beginning of this year was also now the first, you know, until now, August, it was also just amazing. And now September, October are the lowest months in Costa Rica, of course, with the exception of the Caribbean coast, where it's actually the high season because the weather is spectacular in the Limon province and Puerto Viejo, where we have a hotel, Aguas Claras down south. So there we're actually getting ready for high season. But we're busy. We're, you know, doing stuff, continue to invest a lot into the hotels, a lot of capital expenditure projects happening right now, happening in the next months, and also very positive about outlook into 2024. Next high season, reservations look strong. You know, I think we're in a good place.
So you headed into my first question there. Do you think the post-pandemic tourism boom is over?
I don't think it's over, but it's coming back to a little bit more normal. You know, it was just a little bit too crazy, right? You know, and maybe not even sustainable. I mean, like some people were getting rates that didn't make sense anymore. You know, let me start with the airlines. You wanted to fly to New York from Costa Rica or from New York to San Jose, and it was like $1,200, $1,400. You know, and before it was more like in the $600, $700 range, and I think now it's back to 800. You know, 850. So seems a little bit more normal. It's still higher than before, but a little bit more normal. So I don't think the boom is over, but it's leveled itself a little bit. So we're still in a good place. I think Costa Rica continues to be very well positioned, and we have a very positive outlook, but maybe just not as extreme as it was the last couple of years.
Do you see any destinations in the region that can emerge as a serious threat to Costa Rica? I mean, is there a clear number two?
No. We have a hotel in Nicaragua, and that's very challenging still due to the political situation there. We have a hotel in Panama, which is doing really well, and Panama does have potential. And however, you know, Panama clearly tourism is not a priority for anybody there. They just have so many other sources of income, banking, canal, you know, whatever. So there's just no interest in tourism. So if you are doing tourism in Panama, you're on your own, and then you have to just like push it on your own. And so, you know, our Isla Palenque property is doing really well. It's a small hotel on an island. You know, we're the only thing on the island, 8 rooms in a 6-bedroom home. We're right now making plans for an addition of four rooms because we are doing very well. But but it's then hard for us to combine the property with somewhere else of similar quality. So I'm actually heading to Boquete tomorrow to look at a few options, because if we could at least get something in Boquete, which is like the Monteverde of Panama, that could be an option, and then maybe something along the coast on the way to Panama. But there's really very, very few properties out there that are at the level where we need them to be. So in Central America, I don't really see a serious competition. South America is going through its, ups and downs. I mean, you have places like Ecuador and Peru that are amazing and have everything, but politically also unstable. And Colombia is eternal, the eternal. Now it's going to happen, right? But it isn't quite happening. So no, I honestly don't see somebody really stepping up to the plate. And it doesn't mean that their tourism is developing and doing well, but I don't see it as a threat to Costa Rica. I think the region can grow together, if everybody gets their act together.
What do you think are the biggest internal threats to Costa Rica tourism? Meaning, how might we screw things up that could risk a position that maybe we're taking for granted?
Yeah, a couple of things. I guess number one is security. The Costa Rican tourism model depends on people taking a bus, renting a car, going out, walking down the street, walking down the beach, feeling at ease. We don't have the model where people are locked up in all-inclusive resorts, at least not mostly.
Right.
And if you don't have security, if you don't feel safe, then that's a real threat. And this has to do with feeling safe as Costa Ricans living here, or expats like us, and then also that translates to tourists. So security is definitely the number one threat, and it's not right now. We're not being impacted with our guests at the hotels at this point in time with security, but there's these you know fights going on between drug people, fighting for territory, and there's collateral damage, and so it's not good what's happening. It's not impacting yet, but it definitely is something that the government has to pay a lot of attention to and get under control. So security is one thing. The other thing is, um, and you always describe that very well, the danger of Costa Rica turning into North Miami, right? That it's becoming just full of condos, houses, rentals, and it's losing its essence, right? Because if you want to rent a house on the beach, and you don't really have the local flair, the local restaurants, the people that you interact with so much, then yeah, it might get a little bit different, the whole vibe. So I think that the eco lodges, the boutique hotels, the 8-room, 15-room hotels, and the small restaurants, owned by locals, where you walk across the street, the local tour guides, and all of that experience, what made the Costa Rican model so successful, because the dollar gets spread, might also be under threat by uncontrolled development of the, let's call it the Airbnb model. It's not only Airbnb, but just the rental,
Sure.
which is a little bit more anonymous and not so great. And then finally, the other threat would be that Costa Rica, it's a threat. Sometimes people say Costa Rica is expensive, and it probably is expensive, but we measure very carefully at our hotels, which are expensive, that the value for money is there, right?
Yep.
So I think it's not a problem being expensive as long as you deliver. And what I've seen is some places have become quite expensive for what you get,
Yeah.
and I think that's the other threat, where people might just be like, wait, this really worth $300, or should this be costing 120? Should this meal be $40? Should it be 25? Should this tour be $60 or 35? This is where I think it's and then maybe maybe somebody says, well, this tour should be $120 because it was just amazing. All the things I learned, all the things I see, and the personal attention. So it's value, and that Costa Rica doesn't lose the value aspect. And again, I'm not against being high priced. On the contrary, I think Costa Rica should be positioned as the Switzerland of Central America in terms of pricing, but we also got to deliver, like Switzerland does, or other destinations that are high priced.
Yeah, the old saying in marketing is price is what you pay, value is what you get. And there does seem to be post-pandemic in general in hospitality, a little bit of gouging, but it feels like maybe that opportunity is over or passing. You touched on Airbnbs, which is a hot button for me personally, not because I don't love and stay in Airbnbs. I just don't think people sometimes understand the negative consequences of fast proliferation of short-term rentals and bedroom communities. Certainly, they've seen it in places like Spain and Portugal, what happens when all the locals get priced out in one fell swoop. How have hotels, owners, operators adapted their businesses to compete with short-term rentals?
Well, I think it's focusing on what we can do, what they can't do.
Mhm.
So I think it's the service aspect. Let's put it this way: we actually have a house that we rent after the pandemic. It's a very, very luxurious house in Santa Teresa. It's where celebrities stay. It's $10,000-$12,000 a night. And so but we are running it like a hotel. We have a full-time staff, and we provide all the services all the time. Often when you rent a home, it's somebody, sends you a WhatsApp, the key is deposited there. If you need anything, call me, right?
Right.
And then you're basically on your own. If you're staying at a hotel, you always have somebody to go to. Hey, can you help me with this? Can you do this? And it's not a WhatsApp message that might get answered or might not get answered. It's a human that can look you in the eye and say, what do you want to do with your family? You want something a little bit challenging but still safe, so your wife can, because she just had knee surgery, and we can then tailor that. So I think what we did and what we continue to do is personalized service and a little bit this carefree. Just walk in and breakfast is there, right? You don't have to worry about if the guy shows up, or to make breakfast, or you have to buy it yourself and do it. And then one other thing that we've seen is some people have actually come to our hotels, after renting an Airbnb because something broke down, the toilets are not flushing and nobody's coming, or there was a security issue or something else. So I feel we're pretty well positioned to compete just on service and quality, and we really haven't felt the impact too much. I would say.
So I'm going to a Caribbean island this weekend with my wife, and I was pushing for an Airbnb, and she pushed back on, I don't want to worry about anything. I don't want to have a goofy check-in. I don't want to get in there and have the toilet not work or the AC not work. And I was like, all right, you're right. But my favorite thing about Cayuga properties, and feel free to steal this if you like it. I like how you guys have a lot of micro experiences, meaning like sometimes I don't want to go take a full morning tour. I don't want to commit my whole afternoon to go do something, but I wouldn't mind sitting down and having the bartender explain to me the specific local fruits that go into a cocktail, or have the waiter have me try coffee made 3 different ways. That's the stuff that I really love, that's specific and cultural, and where you feel like you get to connect with a person at the property, that your properties do really, really great, that you're just never ever going to get an Airbnb where there's maybe a printout of like, here's some stuff to do. Because sometimes you don't really know what to do, and you want to talk to somebody and you want to get some ideas, even just like a walkabout of the property where you're going to see some nature and some interesting stuff that you're never going to spot on your own, right?
Right. No, totally. And this is something, it's a concept that we've been now doing for well over 15 years. We call it experience, learn, connect, relax. So that's what we want to do with our guests. We want them to have experiences. We want to connect with them. We want them to learn something because people like learning something new. And of course, we want them to relax. So if you go to a Cayuga property, somewhere next to the reception, you'll find a old-fashioned chalkboard, and there's going to be 8 o'clock yoga, and it's all complimentary, right? We're not charging for anything. 8 o'clock is yoga class, and 3 o'clock in the afternoon there might be functional exercise. So the waiter Brian of Arenas and Mar, on his after his shift, does it becomes a personal trainer for whoever wants to do some exercise. As you mentioned, we have coffee classes, like differences between different coffees, altitude, etc. We have a very popular one is the rum tasting, Central American rum tasting. I mean, who wouldn't like that experience?
Sign me up.
We have ceviche making classes, tortilla making classes. In some cases, language classes. We'll teach you, some basic Spanish or Costa Rican, and on the Caribbean, we actually have had broken English classes. The dialect that they speak there. So we have these micro experiences, and you're right. People like that because they don't feel like it's a full commitment, or they had a tour in the morning, in the afternoon they just want to hang out and do something. And that can be as simple as playing ping pong or a volleyball game, or we set up soccer at the beach or something. So you're right, and I think you're that's what it is. That's where Airbnb can deliver. And it's funny that you say I have these experience these sometimes these discussions with my wife as well. She also is like, no, I don't want to deal with anything. Just give me a hotel room. I come back and the hotel is the room is made up. Breakfast is there. I don't have to worry about anything. And I think that's the concept. It's that carefree. So at the very high end of Airbnb, like I mentioned, the Pasha House in Santa Teresa, we can deliver that. It's almost like a hotel experience. But at the medium to lower end Airbnb, you're fencing for yourself. You got to be plumber, you got to be cook, you got to be, you got to work just as hard as you do in your own home, maybe even worse because maintenance might not be as good.
Well, it's almost like flying Spirit Airlines. It's great until it isn't. And you have that one disaster and you go never again, right? I mean, I think everybody's had that one vacation rental experience like that. You operate hotels in a lot of parts of Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama. Is there any other Latin destination where you'd like to do business?
We have looked at some things. We've done some work of master planning and concept development in the Dominican Republic, not in the all-inclusive hotels area, in a little bit more remote area. I could imagine doing something there. And we're actually just sending 2 employees to Cuba to help a friend set up a hotel there. So this is not an official Cayuga thing yet, but we like to sometimes offer our employees opportunities so they can grow. And so for a couple of middle management guys to say, hey, you're now a Cayuga consultant in Cuba, you're helping us set this up. This is a huge motivation. They get to experience another country, another culture, and they can teach other people something that we do. So those are the only 2 things that I can tell you that are like where we're actively involved, but our focus really is on Costa Rica, Panama, and maybe hopefully again Nicaragua once the situation there improves.
What are the latest trends in sustainability? There's obviously a lot of different, it's a big phrase that encompasses a lot of stuff, right? But you're sort of tip of the spear on this. I mean, what are the latest practices, or what are people talking about now? Like what needs sustaining or preserved?
Okay, I'm going to answer this a little different. What's the
Okay.
latest trend in sustainability? Greenwashing.
Well, of course.
Everybody needs to be, sustainable because corporate says, hey guys,
Yeah.
I heard,
Check a
I
box.
read the study that if you're sustainable, you can sell more. So be sustainable. So I've seen a lot of greenwashing in the last year and a half or so, just because people are doing it because they feel they have to, not necessarily because they want to or they're convinced about it. And well, some are actually moving forward and doing some things, but as soon as it becomes a little bit hard a little bit, it costs something, you have to,
Right.
make some changes. Then people are like, yeah, no, maybe not, right? So I think that's definitely something that's happening. Honestly, I'm not sure what the trend is. I can just tell you that at Cayuga, our focus has been and continues to be on people and local. Those are like the two main things that we care about. Of course, we care about no plastic and recycling if necessary, and the energy efficiency and all of those things. But I think that if we can get it right for the local people in the communities where we are, that those communities are going to be more sustainable. And if
Yeah.
we can support local businesses, local purchases, local decor, local everything, then it has a ripple effect that's really strong in the community. So for at Cayuga, you'll always hear about people, you'll always hear about local in different versions.
Is there a destination, or should I say a potential destination in Costa Rica that you think deserves more attention? Meaning, is there a second, third, or even fourth tier destination where if you could wave a wand, you would have that place see more growth, or you would be investing, or you would be operating a property? Is there somewhere maybe you like to go personally that just hasn't taken off yet?
Mhm. Well, I still think that the Southern Caribbean could get a little bit more attention just because it is so amazing,
Yeah.
culturally, nature, everything. So I think that the area south of Limon, really has a lot more potential than what it has. So that's a region that I'm always very excited when I get to go there. Um, I think the south of Costa Rica, the Pacific coast south of Costa Rica, still has some potential as well. All the way from, let's say, Manuel Antonio south to the Osa Peninsula to the Panamanian border. Uh, what I'm seeing there is a lot of homes being built, but not really tourism development. Like people that would go stay in boutique hotels, and that not quite as much. So I think those are the two areas that I think are underrated, and compared to the typical Papagayo Arenal or Guanacaste Arenal itinerary, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's like every travel agent, every travel advisor uh, sells that because they don't know anything else, and I think that's okay, but it's not really Costa Rica. So I think I'd say the Southern Caribbean coast and the Southern Pacific coast are the areas that I'm most excited about. Um, there's many places in Costa Rica, and especially as talking yesterday to some people that wanted us to do something on the east side of San Jose. Let's see into the Los Santos, the Orosi Valley, the
Yeah.
Torrealba, and all of that. And I told him it's really hard to develop because it's so far away from the airport.
Yeah.
It's so hard to get to because you have to cross all of San Jose, and at rush hour that can take you hours.
Yeah.
So I think that's an area that probably deserves better, but logistically just really, really difficult right now.
Yeah, it's almost like you can't merit doing it unless you also own a Caribbean hotel. Like you need to be able to get
Yeah.
get them coming and going,
Mhm.
right? And that may be part of the challenge to the Caribbean's development is the lack of a great destination on the way.
Mhm.
And you
Mhm.
could argue that Rossi is. You could even argue that Turrialba kind of is.
Yeah.
Just we're missing some higher end players.
Yeah.
Last question, Hans. If you were voted president of Costa Rica in the
Yeah.
limited time before your assassination, what piece of legislation would you pass, change, or abolish?
Oh my God. That you totally caught me off guard because since I am a resident here, I'm German. I cannot be Costa Rican president. Um, wow. Uh, there's a lot. One thing, I just try to make the country more efficient, and try to cut bureaucracy and it's just sometimes so hard to get things done because it's so slow, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand does, and frustrating. So I think just kind of make it a little bit easier to do business. I mean, you know how it is. Just
Sure.
open a bank account or anything. So I would try to do that, which will liberate a lot of resources that then can be put in the areas that are in dire straits, which is education, which is security, which is infrastructure, healthcare. But right now, everybody says there's no money for this. Okay,
Right.
there's no money because the money gets eaten up by this huge apparatus that feeds itself. So tough job.
I've heard two interesting solutions for that. One from an ex-president who lives in Europe. I think you know who I'm talking about. Was back, I guess, in the 80s, they had a couple moments where they decided the kind of businesses that they wanted to attract. And then they opened what they called the ventanilla única, like a one-time window where all the different agencies had to be there. So if your idea fit the criteria, it was stamp, 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 it's done. So like, as opposed to you going from office to office to office, waiting half a year, and hiring 3 different law firms who specialize in those. Like if it was good enough to get approved, it got approved. And the other one is the idea of taking the free trade zone concept, which seems to be a San Jose, Central Valley industrial thing, and applying it to some of these rural areas where you want to give some short-term tax breaks, again, for the kind of businesses you want to attract to these regions that might be less attractive today. But there's got to be some great ideas. It just doesn't seem like anybody's working on them, right?
Yeah. But
Well,
yeah, and now that I think back, and because I mentioned it, I think education, man, Costa Rica was pretty good at education, but between the teachers strike, COVID, it's really gotten quite bad. And I think that feeds into the security problem because more kids drop out and get in the hands of the drug people. And I think a reboot of the education system, and you know how it is. Costa Rica society sometimes thrives on mediocrity, right? And so really like pushing a little bit, making sure the teachers get better, making sure that the just like I don't want this to become South Korea or where it's maybe gone a little bit overboard in terms of education that everybody needs a private tutor to make it to the next step, but give it a little bit of 220, put it on a little bit of higher voltage and get it going.
I like it.
That would have a lot of impact, not in the short term, but for sure 5, 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah. It's been a while, I think, since they've really discussed the kind of preparation that they want the student today to have in order to meet tomorrow's needs.
Yeah.
Well, Hans, thanks so much for your time. It's always fun talking.
Thanks, Casey. No, I enjoyed talking as well. And yeah, talk in a couple of years, see how it all played out.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks. Have a great week.
Let's talk tourism.